It is time for another episode of the Walk on Red Shirts podcast. We've got a lot of stuff to get into, including Alabama beating down LSU after they had a live tiger in the stadium, and Miami and Georgia putting their college football playoff hopes on life support. But first, we have William, our very own Moose, here with us this week to talk about college football from the past week and this upcoming week.
Yeah, Jake, and I'm battling migraines. I'm battling Wi-Fi issues. This is true
This is
grit.
your flu game.
This is my flu game. This is week 12 in college football. We got Maction. We got 3 games on Maction. We got the college football playoff rankings that just came out, and we had to show up for the people. We had to show up for the people through thick and thin. So
how to show up. I'll be back at Maction again tomorrow night. I'm going to Ohio University. They play Eastern Michigan tomorrow night, so we back at Maction.
Might be a better game than last week.
Yeah, that was. We're not even going to get into that one. That game, it feels like it was so long ago because that game was brutal, and there was by the end of the game again for Kent State, there was nobody there. Absolutely nobody there. Nobody.
Did you know?
Go ahead.
Did you know that the college football campus tour was sitting right in front of you?
So he was actually not sitting right in front of me. I don't want to call him out for this, but he was not sitting right in front of me. He was in the press box before I got there. So he was in the press box right before I got there because I saw that he was there. So I sent him a message because I had a pole in my way. So the 30 to 50 yard line on the north sideline, I wasn't able to see, or the 30, 50 yard line. So I was struggling with that. And I sent him a message saying that, I think I have the more obstructed view. And then he sent me a picture back, the one he posted then, of him standing right in there. So he was actually somewhere in the stadium. I never got a chance to go find him, but he was there.
Jake calls college football campus tour as a fraud.
Yeah. Make sure you quote that one. Before we get into everything with the games, let's start with the college football playoff rankings. They just came out, and it's 9:30 on Tuesday night. So we just got the rankings. Like we did last week, we're going to do too high, too low, just right. William, give me your reaction. Who do you think's too high to start?
Yeah, let's go with our Goldilocks reactions. I think Missouri is too high. You had Missouri last week, and somehow they moved up a spot. 23 is way too hot for Missouri. They have no business being ranked. It took a miracle for them to beat an abysmal Oklahoma team. They scored 14 points in 33 seconds, which is great, but you were down. I mean, you should have lost that game. It took a miracle for you to win. They have no business being ranked. I think South Carolina's going to put them out of their misery this week. They're just going to pull the cord. And Eli Drinkwitz, for some reason, at the end of the game,
he thinks they're still in play for the playoffs.
You know what? I talked about Kurt Cignetti back in the summer. You kind of want your coach to be that delusional. That's too delusional. There's no way the players believe that.
Hey, there's a certain point where you want them to drink the Kool-Aid. This is not one. I'm sorry. You want them to have faith, but dude, you're not making the playoffs.
This is beyond Lloyd Christmas, so you're saying there's a chance to what was that girl's name? What was the girl's name? It's Swanson. Dumb and Dumber, Jake. Come on.
I've only seen Dumb and Dumber like maybe twice in my whole life, I'll be honest.
Wow.
Yeah, sorry. All right, I'm gonna take my too high as Miami. Miami's 9. Miami is number 9. And spoiler, my too low is SMU at 14. And the reason I don't think there's much of a difference between Miami and SMU if you really go to it. Actually, I think SMU is the better team.
Yeah, I
believe SMU is the better team. I think SMU is the better team. They have not needed a comeback almost every single week. When you look at Miami, they've needed a comeback in multiple games they were double score or losing in the second half. Duke, they were losing by 11. Cal, they were down like 4 touchdowns or something like that. Virginia Tech, they were down big. They needed massive comebacks and some lucky plays. And I would have SMU ahead because SMU's only losses to BYU, who they have at 6. I would have SMU around 9 or 10, and I would have Miami around 13, 14. I was going
to say, what if you just swapped them?
I would just swap them. If you put them at 9 and 14, I would be 100% okay with it.
Which is insane to me. Like, you have to think the committee's logo watching. Now, this does not take away from what Cam Ward's doing. Cam Ward has that Miami offense humming, and they still looked good against Georgia Tech, but Georgia Tech was just able to make more plays. And the most amazing drive I'd ever seen was the 17-play, 95-yard 10-minute and 45-second drive that Georgia Tech went on to end the first quarter and into the second quarter. That is just man football. Find a way, keep the ball out of Miami's hands. Because the reason Miami lost that game, Jake, is because the defense stayed on the field.
Yeah, and I feel like we all had a feeling that eventually that defense was going to let them down. It had continued to show cracks, and eventually it was going to break. And for you as a Clemson fan, Miami's got a big game against Syracuse here in a couple of weeks where they're going to play Kyle McCord. And granted, McCord has looked a little shaky the last couple of weeks, but that game is in the Carrier Dome, last game of the year. You're talking about Kyle McCord's last game in college. Coincidentally, he only had 4 years. Meanwhile, we're talking about Cam Rising having like 8 and Alan Bowman playing like 7 years. Kyle McCord is going to actually Kyle McCord's going to play a true 4 years because his freshman year he played 5 games in the regular season, which he plays one less game. He's got 1 more year of eligibility.
Oh,
he really is.
Let me ask you something real quick.
Yeah.
What if I told you an unranked team was playing a top 5 team? Their leading passer had 67 yards and completed 50% of their passes. Their leading rusher had 20 carries for 93 yards and a touchdown. Their leading receiver only had 28 yards. And they were outgained by 60 yards. Would you think they would win by 5 points?
No.
Yeah, that was Georgia Tech's stat line. Those are their leading stat receivers. And I think the most glaring thing, too, is the time of possession like we talked about earlier. Georgia Tech was at 34 minutes, 49 seconds, and Miami was just a little over 25 minutes.
Yeah,
so there's your ball game.
35-25, 10 extra minutes having the ball.
Right.
So who do you have as your too low?
My too low is South Carolina. And number one, I think it's awesome that the committee is feeding into the rivalry and making South Carolina 1 spot below Clemson. But if we're being honest, I put on Twitter the other day, South Carolina is hotter than bacon grease, and they really, really are. The way they beat Texas A&M, the way they just beat Vanderbilt, they're just outmanning people. And if Lenora Sellers doesn't turn the ball over, which he's held on to the football in the last 2 games, they're a good football team. I also put a fun fact out there, Jake. South Carolina is tied for 30th in the country for turnover margin, and that's because they have forced 19 turnovers and they have given up 14. If you cut in half the turnovers they've given up in half, so move it to 7, which is an average number, they would be 3rd in the nation in turnover margin. They force a lot of turnovers, and if they could just control the football, I think they're a top 15 team. I think they would be good enough to be in the playoff. And meanwhile, we're messing around with some other teams that with 2-3 losses they're keeping up there. I don't think South Carolina is a playoff team. I don't think they would beat some of these playoff contenders that are up there now. But I think they would beat Miami. I think they would crush Miami. I think they would
too.
Yes, I think they would beat. I think they could beat Penn State. I think they could beat a lot of teams that are up there that are already in that ranking, and I think they beat the bricks off of Notre Dame. I would love to see them play Notre Dame. I would actually pull for South Carolina in that game. So South Carolina is my team that's too low. I wanted to do SMU, but just to make it a little different, I'll go South Carolina.
We're already on the same page about SMU. Spoiler alert for later.
Yeah, couldn't double up on it.
So for my just right, I actually took Colorado, and Colorado is sitting here at 17, and Colorado has been playing some pretty good football lately. And I am not a big Dion fan. I'm not really huge on Coach Prime, but ever since that game earlier in the year where they played Nebraska, this feels like a very different Colorado team. They played Kansas State, and they played Kansas State real tight. You want to talk about they beat down Arizona. I mean, Arizona's not playing well, but they're still talented. Tetero and Millen, no Fafita. They shut them down to 7 points. Texas Tech's a pretty physical team. You want to talk about Taj Brooks on that team. They hold them to 27 points. The Colorado offensive line is starting to come around. I am starting to buy stock in Colorado. Yeah. I think they are exceeding expectations. Last year felt like a learning curve for Travis Hunter, for Shadur Sanders, for that whole team. Felt like that it wasn't quite right. They're putting it together, and they're not winning fluky games. That Baylor game earlier in the year was probably the biggest fluky win they have. Other than that, UCF, they were like a double-digit underdog, and they won by 27 points. They win by 14. This past week, the only fluky part was how they scored a touchdown to end the game because there was a fumble to make it 14 instead of 7 points. But Colorado's playing well. Playing well. They play Utah this week. This is a very interesting game to me because of how physical Utah is. Dorian Singer has played pretty well. But Utah, I think they're going to struggle to score points. I think these last 3 games for Colorado could be tricky because Utah, they're physical, they're well coached. Kansas could be that team that does it for them because Kansas has played well. They just haven't been able to do it. Oklahoma State, I think they're going to destroy. I don't think Oklahoma State. I think they've mailed it in for the year. I don't think there's any hope for Oklahoma State. That's the only one I think. But I like Colorado being ranked there. I think they're 17 or 18. They're 17. I think it's a good spot. I think it's a good spot for them.
Yeah. You know what's crazy, Jake, is Colorado has not had a 100-yard rusher yet this year. Their highest rusher on the season, he had a 91-yard game. Augustave against Cincinnati had 91 yards. But other than that, the next highest is 65, then 53, then 41, then 39. Like they don't run the ball very well. So if Utah can kind of make them one-dimensional and have to make them run the football, I think Utah's got to. I mean, Utah had BYU on the brinks of
Utah
losing.
Should have beat BYU. If Utah would have been a little bit more aggressive on their play calling, they would have won that game.
Absolutely.
I will say, I don't think Colorado can win a playoff game because of that exact reason, because they can't run the ball. And if defenses can just do a 4-man front and drop everybody else back, I don't think Colorado is going to be able to. The fact that they're able to do it right now because these other teams are not as talented. Texas Tech, Cincinnati, Arizona, UCF, Baylor, Colorado State. Like, they lost to Kansas State, who can match up talent-wise. Nebraska beat them by 18 points, which is honestly right now it's very confusing.
Yeah, it really is. Like, especially having watched Nebraska play. Who just beat the bricks off? Was it Kansas?
Nebraska got beat down by Iowa or something like that recently.
Yeah, they got destroyed by Iowa. But Nebraska is such a fickle team, which they just fired their offensive coordinator.
Indiana beat them by 50, and UCLA beat them by 7.
UCLA, and losing to UCLA is a beatdown. Even though UCLA just beat Iowa.
UCLA might make a bowl game. I'm just gonna say that.
Yeah, that was not on my bingo card this year. I'll tell you that much.
UCLA has won 3 games in a row. They beat Rutgers, Nebraska, and Iowa. That is wild.
Right.
Anyways, who is you're just right?
Mine's Clemson. I know it's biased. Greg McElroy, shout out. You little punk, talking about Clemson shouldn't even be ranked in the top 25. Like, what are you doing? What are we talking about here? Who would be ranked ahead of them? So anyway, Clemson at 20, I think is exactly right. The best 2 teams they've played this year, they lost to, both by double digits. But then you respond. You see the team. I think you saw the team take a turn in a positive direction against Virginia Tech. Now you can point back to the App State game where they took a turn. I don't think that was the turn that we all thought it was. I think that was the offensive explosion. We saw Cade Klubnik, who now looks competent at the quarterback position, take a big step. But then you see Virginia Tech. You see them have to win through grit. And the biggest thing out of that game was Clemson went from giving up 8 yards a carry against Louisville and then turning around against another run-heavy team and giving up 1.8 yards a carry. 1.9 yards per carry, which that's how you do it. That's how you respond. That's how a defense responds. They held Virginia Tech to 40 yards rushing, 188 yards passing. The defense really stepped up against this decent offense Virginia Tech team. I mean, Kyron Jones has been somewhat of a disappointment, but not this bad. And then I'm forgetting the running back's name. He ended up going out and getting hurt. So Schlee, their backup quarterback, who they put in, ended up being their leading rusher. But Virginia Tech is a better team than people think, and the defense is what stepped up. So I think 20 is the perfect sweet spot. They haven't done anything to be in the top 15. I think 20 is perfect. They're the best out of the top 25. I am perfectly fine with that. I think that is very reasonable. If they were unranked, I think that would be unreasonable. Had they kept playing like they were playing in the first half, then they should not have been ranked, and they probably wouldn't have won.
So let's jump over to Florida State. Florida State fires their offensive coordinator, Alex Atkins, fires defensive coordinator, Adam Fuller, and fires their wide receiver coach, Ron Duggins. To me, this comes off as we have one win. We can't go the whole season without doing something. So we're just going to replace the coordinators because it's cheaper than firing the head coach.
Yeah, 2025 started this week. And I don't know if you saw this, Jake, but like a lot of bad publicity was coming out about Ron Duggins, I think is actually how it's pronounced, even though it's spelled like Duggins. I think that, the bad publicity was Keon Coleman and some high profile receivers were going up to some of the recruits and saying, do not come here, do not play for Duggins. He's a terrible coach. And it was confirmed on the Seminoles 24/7 podcast that was actually happening. And you kind of wonder like what was happening. But then you look at their best receiver in the past 2 years was a transfer. It was Keon Coleman. Johnny Wilson was a huge disappointment. 6'7", 215 pounds, can run, can't catch a football. Who is their best receiver this year? I mean, they have more drops than egg drop soup. And it is just absolutely just abysmal watching them play. Like everybody wants to put blame on DJU in the first half of the season, and then no one wants to talk about them anymore because they're already dead. Let's keep beating that horse. But the biggest issue I saw in that offense was the fact that they can't catch a freaking football. And so I think that was the best firing, if you could say that. And you never want to call for someone's job, but I think if someone should have lost their job, it was the wide receiver coach. You cannot have those big time recruits and they can't catch a freaking football. The OC and the DC, I mean, those are your guys last year. You were 13-1 last year. I don't know. That sucks for them. I don't think any of this is on them. So Mike Norvell, I thought maybe feels like he had to do something. And then it comes out that allegedly multiple NFL coaches are interested in these roles. I call BS, Jake. I call BS because number one, there's people fleeing college football right now to go coach in the NFL because number one, the time is more lucrative. It's a more of a 9-to-5 job in the NFL than it is all day. 2, they don't have to deal with NIL. 3, they don't have to deal with NIL. 4, they don't have to recruit. And 5, they don't have to deal with NIL. So why would they come back out of the NFL, out of their cushiony seat to go to Florida State into a program that might take a few years to get back on track? I think that's bullcrap. I think it's a publicity stunt to get people interested in a job. I don't think anybody wants to go there.
Now, I think you may be able to find some position coaches that would want a OC or DC jobs,
right?
Because they can't get it in the NFL. That's the only thing I can think. You're not going to get you're not going to call up Jesse Minter and be like, "Hey, you want to come back to college?"
Yeah.
No, Jesse Minter's about to get an NFL head coaching job. You're not going to find a successful offensive or defensive coordinator. You're not going to call Ben Johnson at the Lions and be like, "Hey, you want to come to Florida State?" No.
Hey, Joe Brady, lead the Bills. Come back into the college room. Like they do not have their pick of the litter. I mean, and if anybody buys that, I mean, hey, you're an optimist. That's what I'll say.
Maybe they can get a good offensive coordinator from college because Florida State can get money and they can pay, and obviously it's a prestigious job. If you can do it at Florida State, you can get yourself a head coaching gig, offensive or defensive side of the ball. That's
the
100%
pressure,
true.
But the pressure is going back onto the coordinators instead of the head coach. We're seeing the flip. I mean, we're seeing Billy Napier get job security. We're seeing Mike Norvell keep job security. We see Dave Aranda keeping his job over in Baylor, and coordinators getting fired left and right. So
I think part of that is also with this revenue sharing, because now all of a sudden the schools are going to have to pay out to athletes. Right. And also you've been asking these boosters to help give money to NIL. We've hit a point where these coaches' contracts buyouts are ridiculous. Like, Mike Norvell's buyout is in the $50 million. Lincoln Riley's is expected to be somewhere in the $100 million. We've got guys going between 50 and 100 million that if you want to buy them out, then you have to go buy out whoever you want to be the head coach. So who are you going to get is the question. And do you wait until this it almost feels like a bubble is about to burst.
Yeah.
That all of these coaches' salaries have hit a threshold that is unsustainable because we've hit a point where buyouts, and also we've hit a point where we can't just fire coaches after 2 years anymore because you're not happy that immediately they didn't turn it around. You have to give time to build a culture. I really never bought into the fact of like, well, you got to get their players in. Well, once they're on your team, they're your players. Maybe they don't quite fit your system, but you maneuver your system to help fit the players that are there, and you recruit guys that can help fit the long-term part of your program there. So that's my hot take with that. Let's jump into last week. Let's talk about Alabama and LSU. This game was never close, even though they had a live tiger there to try to be excited. And then the LSU governor basically said LSU let us down after we brought a tiger there.
Yeah, that was the only live tiger that was there. Everybody on the LSU side sucked. It was just terrible. I mean, it was a game in the first quarter, and then after that, it wasn't. I mean, it was bowling shoe ugly, as our friend Josh Pate likes to say. I say he's our friend. It's because I listen to him, not because he's actually come on the show or talk to us. But I can claim he's my friend, right? Facebook friend, Twitter friend.
So I was at the OSU Purdue game for a little bit, and then I was watching all of the afternoon games. So I get back home, and I'm watching the Alabama LSU game, the whiteout for Ohio State, or not Ohio State, Penn State and Washington, and then I forget what other game I had on there. I might have had Notre Dame and Florida State on just as another game. But whatever my third game was up there, I fell asleep towards the end of the first quarter for all of them, and I woke up, and they were all complete and utter blowouts. Yeah. I was like, well, I'm glad I did not stay up and watch any of these games because they all sucked.
Yeah, they were.
Everybody just got absolutely beat down, and it was not close for any of these.
But you know what the craziest thing about the Alabama LSU game was, Jake? The leading rusher for Alabama was Jalen Milroe, who ran for more yards than he passed. He passed for 109, ran for 185. What's even crazier is the leading receiver. You want to guess who the leading receiver was?
Ryan Williams.
Jam Miller, the running back. Miller. So you have a running back leading the team in receiving. You have a quarterback leading the team in rushing, and he's got more rushing yards than he's got passing yards. I mean, Alabama just said, all right, we're just going to take the air out of the football. And then if we need to, we'll throw it to our running back, and we're just going to beat you that way. And I think it worked more. The weather kind of worked into Alabama's favor. It was a very rainy, wet game, which LSU is a pass first team. So I think that kind of does help them a little bit, but it's not 29 points worth of help. I think LSU has some glaring issues in that defense. That's what we thought coming into the season, and it's been proven over and over again. So LSU's got some work to do.
Yeah, and Alabama really tried to shorten this game. I mean, each team had 5 possessions in the first half, which sounds like a lot, but in the history of college football, 5 possessions in the first half also is not a lot at the same time.
Right.
And when you're up 21-6 at halftime, you really need to come out and you really need to score, and you drive the whole way down the field and throw an interception. That really takes the air out of the whole game.
Right.
And then not only does that, then Alabama drives down the field and scores a touchdown. So all of a sudden, when you're looking at, maybe you can make it 21-13, maybe you have a chance. In the blink of an eye, it goes from what you think might be 21-13 to 28-6. And
yeah,
I mean, at that point, no matter if guys think that they're going to be competitive, you have guys starting to mail it in.
Right.
You go out there, 5 plays and a punt. Like, Brian Kelly do you believe that Brian Kelly is the solution at LSU, or do you think LSU needs to look at a different coach?
I've never liked Brian Kelly, so I don't know how much my opinion can be unbiased, but I think he recruits well. He's got big time recruits coming in. He's got the number 1 quarterback in the country supposed to be coming in. If
Michigan's making an NIL play for him, both of their offenses suck.
And they've got Connor Stallions as his OC now in high school, which is just mind-boggling how this dude.
I don't know how the NCAA just didn't arrive the next day and be like, yeah, like no.
Yeah, how does Connor Stallions keep showing up in our news? Like, what? This dude is a genius at being relevant. But anyway, I don't think he's the guy. I mean, I'm not I don't think he's a good coach. I don't. I mean, what was Notre Dame's best years under him? They would make the playoff and get absolutely manhandled by Alabama or Clemson.
But they did make the playoff.
Yeah, but they get. Honestly, I think they make the playoff because of their logo, and I think that's what's going to happen this year too. It's
2020.
happened
They
again.
deserve to make it. 2020 doesn't.
Yeah, 2020 they did. You're right. I agree.
They 100% deserved it in 2020 because they made the ACC Championship, as weird as that was, and they lost in the ACC Championship game, but they beat Clemson earlier that year, and they were 12-1 or however. I don't remember how many games they played, but they had one loss, and they clearly were one of the 4 best teams that year. They were really good on defense.
Yeah.
The whole thing when Brian Kelly was at Notre Dame was the offense always struggled. He never had the offensive playmakers to really compete. He could build a defense, but his offense, when they went against top teams, looked like this. They scored 13 points. They scored 10 points. He cannot be playing top tier teams. And, Texas A&M, he scored 23 points. USC scored 20 points. He can't score 4 touchdowns in big games, but he's giving up 4 touchdowns in big games.
Yeah. So
every game they've allowed 42, 38, 27. You're a defensive-minded guy, and you're allowing 4 touchdowns in big games. If you cannot have a strong offense, you have to be keeping that under 3 touchdowns. They got to stay under 21 points, and he can't do that.
Right. No, they're just not a very good football team. They're not complete. They haven't been since he's been there. I mean, even when they had a Heisman quarterback, they finally had a great offense, and then there's literally these like the worst. Like I never thought I would say that LSU. I never thought I would say LSU and bad defense in the same sentence. Like growing up, you could set your clock.
I think of Glenn Dorsey back in 2007 when they had that dominant defensive line, and now LSU, they can score points, but when they go against a good defense, they can't.
Right. So it's they've switched their identity, and it's just bad. So LSU. I mean, honestly, if we go back to the college football rankings, maybe LSU's ranked too high.
I wonder what Brian Kelly's buyout is, just because. Oh, it's $61 million.
Oh, there you go. That's why he's still there.
He won't be going anywhere anytime soon because $61 million is a lot of money. 2 teams that were upset this past week. We had Miami and Georgia. Miami obviously loses to Georgia Tech. Georgia loses to Ole Miss. Which team is more likely to miss the college football playoff because of their loss?
Georgia. Yeah, because Miami essentially has a cakewalk the next 2 games, and then the committee has already said they're not going to hold the conference championship loss against you. So if they're willing,
but if they lose, that puts A&M or puts SMU into the mix. Do you think that would push Miami out? Miami's sitting at 9. Like, you're almost on a fringe.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, personally, I think it should, but we've already talked about it. We don't think Miami's a top 10 team. We think they're 15th, 14th.
Yeah, I would put them right around 15.
But I think Georgia. I think because honestly, and the reason I say Georgia too is I think they're about to get their teeth kicked in by Tennessee. The fact that if you're a betting person, the fact that they have Tennessee as a 9.5-point dog to Georgia, that's such easy money because I think the only way Georgia beats them is if it's a slugfest and neither offense can score. There's no way Georgia beats Tennessee by 10 points. No way. That is the easiest.
Is it a hot take for me to say that I think both Miami and Georgia are going to miss the playoff?
I would love that.
I think it's going to happen because I really do believe that Miami's going to lose to Syracuse here in a couple weeks. I think Miami loses to Syracuse in the Carrier Dome, and I think Georgia loses this weekend, and that ends both their seasons because they're not going to put a 2-loss ACC team that doesn't even make the ACC Championship game. And I'm sorry, as much as Heather Dinich wants to say that a 3-loss SEC team is not eliminated, Georgia, I know you are playing the hardest schedule, but you can't lose 3 of the 4 hardest games on your schedule.
Right, exactly. And get her off of my TV screen, please. She's been banging the drum for Notre Dame. Now she's banging the drum for the SEC to have 94 teams in the playoff. Like, give me a freaking break. If a team has lost 3 games, I don't care who they played. They do not have any business being in there over a 1 loss or an undefeated team. Period.
That's exactly. It would take if you want to get into a 3 versus a 2 loss team. Okay, I can possibly entertain your argument depending on who it is. If you're talking about a 2 loss Big 12 team versus a 3 loss SEC team like Georgia, okay. If it's 3 loss Georgia versus 2 loss Colorado, yeah, I'm probably going to take Georgia in that situation. But you know what? We're not debating those 2 teams. We're talking. About if Indiana loses to Ohio State, should Georgia get in over them? Indiana has looked dominant.
If Boise State loses in the Mountain West Championship game, and they have 2 losses, 1 loss being to Oregon, and then whoever they lose to, they'll say UNLV in the Mountain West Championship game. Georgia comes in with 3 losses. Do you think they put a 3-loss Georgia team in above a 2-loss Boise State team? I think they absolutely would, and I think that's disgusting.
I wouldn't say it's disgusting because Georgia's 3 losses are way better than Boise State's potential loss to Colorado State.
But also to Oregon. And then the committee has to look themselves in the eye and say, hey, we're putting Notre Dame in, whose sole loss is to freaking NIU, who won't even make a bowl game, middle of the road MAC team. And then we're going to turn around and say, but Georgia's losses are so much better than Boise State's losses. Like,
Notre Dame's wins might be better than Georgia's wins at that point. Overall, their wins.
I think so. I think so. And it's how they're beating people. I mean,
yeah, they're not beating anybody close at this point. They're beating everybody by 40 points.
We're getting hypothetically mad right now, Jake. We're going to be real life pissed off in a couple of weeks. Just go ahead and prepare yourselves, people.
Yeah, I can't wait.
Just because there's more people in, you're still going to be just as angry.
I remember talking about this last year, being like, well, if you're the 12th team, and you get left out, are we really going to be mad about it? And we were like,
yes.
No, actually we are. We are actually mad about it.
We should have known better.
We were like, no, if you're the 12th team, like, we really can't be that mad. Never mind. Yeah, well, I am pretty mad. I'm on the train that if Boise State wins out, Boise State should not be 12. Boise State should be 9, 10, potentially 8, depending on how it plays out, and maybe even hosting a game, because my God, how awesome would it be to see Alabama going to the Smurf turf in December? I am so in on that.
Right now, they're slated to go to Bloomington. Hoosiers will be hosting the time. Now, to take the conversation back to Georgia, I think the worst thing about Georgia this year is not even how they're winning, but how they're losing too. And Carson Beck, thank you. Carson Beck has been awful. He had 2 fumbles in this game. I don't think they lost him. Nope, they lost both of them. And he threw a pick. So he turned the ball over 3 times. He just did it in a different way. So he is very creative. He's not going to throw 3 interceptions every single time. Sometimes maybe he just fumbles. But they got beat by Ole Miss, who couldn't run the football and only threw for 199 yards. They didn't even throw for 200 yards against Georgia. And they lost by 18 points. I mean, so
is there a point where Georgia has to consider a backup quarterback?
I think that point was 3 weeks ago.
They have Jaden Rashada, I'm pretty sure, on their roster, who was the starting quarterback at Arizona State last year. Gunnar Stockton is technically who their backup is, but I thought Rashada was on that roster too.
I think he is. And I think the worst part, and like everybody's all up in arms about the guy jumping up and down. Jake Pope, I think his name is, jumping up and down with his friends after the game. I think if anybody should be mad, if you should be mad at anybody, it should be Carson Beck sitting on the sideline with that dumbass smile after turning the ball over 3 times.
I like how Kirby Smart comes out and calls that stupid, but every time that his players get arrested, it's no comment.
It's no comment, or it's like, it's just a bad situation. Well, yeah, it's a bad situation. Those guys are being idiots. Like, anyway, like the whole Georgia disciplinary culture is just absolutely terrible. And I hate speculating on something that I'm not involved in intimately. So I'm not there. I don't know how he's actually disciplining. But look at him talk about it. You're exactly right, Jake. He talks about DUIs. He talks about speeding tickets. It's just a bad situation, or he has no comment. And then you've got a guy who's jumping up and down after a loss, and you're calling him an idiot on national television. Like, I know you're frustrated.
Because he saw his childhood friend on the field. And it's a really bad look. It is a really bad look. I will say it's a bad look. But there's been a lot worse that's happened in Georgia that was a really bad look.
Absolutely. I mean, the offense is just just bad. Just bad to the freaking bone.
Well, let's
Just
talk
terrible.
about Georgia versus Tennessee this week. Let's talk about Georgia against Tennessee this week. And Tennessee's offense obviously has not been stellar. The defense has been the best part of Tennessee this year. We thought Nico Iamaleava, one day I'll be able to say it right, was going to be a stud for them. Turns out that he's a fine quarterback, but he needs a little bit more development, just proving that starting true freshman isn't always the right idea. He's a sophomore, and he still needs development.
Right.
But, the last couple weeks, they've looked pretty good. Obviously, they beat Alabama a couple weeks ago. You get a couple confidence games with Kentucky and Mississippi State. Now you're on the road at Georgia Saturday night. I mean, Georgia's defense has to win them the game, right?
That's the only way they win. Their offense is abysmal. And who needs to really buckle up their chin straps is that front seven. If you're going to beat Tennessee, you got to stop that run game. And
Dylan
right
Sampson is going to be coming straight up the middle, and you got to stop him.
Yes, he is. And Georgia has the 21st ranked rush defense. So it is a good rush defense. But damn, I think this might be the best running attack they've seen all year. I mean, yeah, like you said, Dylan Sampson is legit. And then Nico is hitting his stride at the right time. Watching the Kentucky game, the second, third, and fourth quarter, he took a huge leap forward. He was completing the passes he needed to make, like he was making the throws that he was supposed to make, which he wasn't doing all year. Look at the Alabama game. He was making bad decisions in the Alabama game and bad throws in the Alabama game, missing guys. They could have beaten Alabama a lot worse had he played well. If he comes in and has a decent game against Georgia and doesn't turn the ball over, I think they might beat them by 10 points. Again, I think it's absolutely insane that they are 9.5-point dogs to Georgia.
One thing about this game is Nico is in concussion protocol right now.
There you go. That's why they're 9.5 dogs.
As of 2 hours ago, Nico, so he was injured against Mississippi State in the second half. He did dress and practice on Tuesday, but his status is still undetermined. So if Nico doesn't play, I mean, I don't think Tennessee can win this game.
No, you're right. And I didn't realize that. So that makes sense. I think Nico plays, though.
If he dressed and practiced on Tuesday, I have to think that they are planning on him playing.
Right.
If you're going to have the backup, you're not going to want Nico taking QB1 reps again when the backup which I believe his name is Gaston.
Yeah.
Gaston Moore. Gaston Moore could be the one that is out there taking snaps on Saturday. You wouldn't want Nico taking snaps from Moore if Moore had potential to be the quarterback one on Saturday.
Right.
So it'll be interesting. Gaston Moore, just for sake, is a senior who has thrown a total of 42 passes in his career.
Yeah.
So not a guy you really want to be going against Georgia. It would be the similar situation to Florida putting their walk-on redshirt from Harvard or Yale or whatever Ivy League school he was from in and asking him to win the game.
Yeah.
But the difference is Tennessee's way more talented, has a strong defense, and Dylan Sampson's the running back.
Yeah.
Heading into this weekend, we also have Missouri and South Carolina. And we talked about it already. Does South Carolina put Missouri out of their misery?
Absolutely. I think, again, it's the style of play. Look at all the teams that have given Missouri fits all year. Texas A&M, who beat the bricks off of them. Alabama, who beat the bricks off of them. Both those teams pride themselves in the run game. They are run-first teams who they run to set the pass. What does South Carolina do? The same exact thing. They play good defense. They play great defense, and they run the freaking football. Missouri might lose this one by 30 as well. I do not see them keeping up with South Carolina, and I don't even think Brady Cook's going to play. I think Drew Pine is going to be the starting quarterback again this week, and that's even worse for Missouri. So
Drew Pine's not good. He's not good. He's not.
So I don't know what else there is to say about this game. Nick Emenware.
People look at South Carolina's record and see 6-3, but South Carolina has a 2-point loss to Alabama and a 3-point loss to LSU. Granted, LSU was at home. You would have liked to see him win that one. Alabama was on the road. Ole Miss is the only game where they've actually truly lost.
Yeah,
that's the only game they've truly lost. And if they have one loss, we'd be talking about a 8 ranked South Carolina team right now, 7th top 10 ranked South Carolina team, because then you'd have wins over Alabama, A&M, and LSU. You might have them as the top ranked SEC team, honestly.
They'd be number one. They'd only have one conference loss. Well, they'd be tied with Texas with one conference loss.
They have better wins than Texas does. If you flip that around, they might have better wins than Texas right now.
They do. They absolutely do. Who is Texas?
They beat Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt. That's their top win. They beat Vanderbilt on the road by 21 points last week.
Right, and
they also beat
worse.
A&M by 24 points.
Right. So there's your other, and then and of course Texas is number 3. They were my other one that I was going to put us too high. Jake, this is. I hate that I have to keep saying all these things about South Carolina, because they might absolutely beat the doors off of Clemson this year. And I know I'm saying that out loud on a podcast, and this is blasphemy as a Clemson fan, but guys, if Clemson doesn't turn it around against Pitt, if you don't see any sort of you saw it a little bit against Virginia Tech with that defense. The defense will have to come blue collar lunch pail mentality against South Carolina, because that game is scaring me. That game is scaring me. And every time I have to talk good about them, it just hurts my heart, because I just know what's loading up to that last Saturday in November. Scare me, Jake.
Speaking of Clemson, let's talk about their game this weekend. They play Pitt, which is unfortunately one of the best games this weekend, because the slate is just not super strong for this weekend. There's potential games, but when you want to talk about like top tier, we're lacking for this weekend for sure. But this game 2 weeks ago looked like it could be a 1-loss Clemson versus a undefeated Pitt, and now we've got 2-loss Clemson versus 2-loss Pitt.
Yeah, both teams did not do their job.
No. And I have sold my stock on Pitt. I think Pitt was really hot, and I think that they were just benefiting from an easier schedule, I guess you could say. They didn't really have too many top-tier opponents, and they struggled with some of their Big 12 teams. Well, they struggled against Cincinnati, and they played fine against some ACC teams. I think Clemson is just more physical for this weekend. I don't think that Pitt is going to be able to match up. Pitt has struggled on the defensive side of the ball, but they can get to the quarterback. But they have, other than that game against Syracuse, they haven't been able to contain the pass too well.
Yeah, and just to add to that, sack stack, I think they're 3rd in the country in sacks. They're 5th. They're 5th in the country in sacks. So yeah, they really do get out the quarterback. Now, I don't think Eli Holstein's going to play. So I think that makes a big difference. And Clemson was able to get film on the backup last week when Pitt dropped an egg against Virginia. I was hoping that would be a ranked win. They did not do what we needed them to do, so it's really hurting our playoff chances, the little hope we had.
It's just funny that Pitt is so good at getting the quarterback, and they're like, I don't know what this number is here, but they're like 100 and something against the pass, allowing 251 yards per game. And you would think if you can get after the quarterback, you'd be pretty good at pass defense, but apparently not.
That is weird. I never even made that correlation yet. They're 113th in the country in passing yards allowed, and they're 5th in the country in sacks. So
usually, if you get after the quarterback, you're forcing pressure, forcing bad decisions. I mean, that's what they did against Syracuse, and Kyle McCord still threw for 300 yards. Granted, most of it was in garbage time, but they have 12 interceptions this year, 5 against Syracuse, but 7 the rest of the year. So they're forcing turnovers, 30 sacks on the year. Like those are pretty good stats. The problem is you're allowing over 250 yards in the air still.
Yeah, because you would think if they're getting a lot of sacks, they'd have to do a lot of the quick game, but teams are averaging 6.88 yards per attempt, so they're throwing the ball down the field.
Yeah, a mystery there. I don't quite get it, but it'll be interesting Saturday with Klubnik, how he manages, because Pitt's going to get pressure on him. Yeah. They've been able to get pressure on just about anybody. Does Pitt get home, or does Klubnik get the ball out early? How do they try to involve, guys shorter, Brandon Stoll, Maffa, because if they're going to get home, or how are they getting home? I haven't studied Pitt's defense. Is it mainly on sacks? Are they getting home with 4? I haven't studied their defense enough to be able to sit here and confidently say, this is how Clemson's going to have success based off of Pitt's defense.
Well, Clemson's going to have to run the football, and Pitt is 19th in the country and stopping the run. But
Again, how does that make sense if they can stop the run and then they're just letting all of it up on the pass?
This is the most interesting defense. Now, I will say Pitt has faced, I think the best rushing attack they faced all year was 65th in the country. So it's not like they're playing teams that are really putting pressure on you in the run game. So we're going to kind of find out if that team is as good as advertised as they're ranked statistically. But um, Pitt has a good front four. They play very, very physically. Um, and if you give Cade Klubnik time, so this game is going to come down to two things: can Clemson run the football and keep third and short, second and short, in manageable situations, and then can Cade Klubnik make good decisions and complete his passes? Last week, it looked like he was playing poorly. Cade, that is. We had a few drops. I think we had about 4 drops in the first half. So the wide receivers have to step up. I mean, we need guys to, when they get open, to make the play when the play's there. They did in the second half against Virginia Tech. You kind of hope they carry over that momentum into this week. I'm in agreement with you. I think Clemson wins. I think Clemson covers. I think they can handle business this week. I'm sad that you didn't get credentialed for this game, though. I'm sad you didn't get credentialed.
I wanted to be able to sit at home and watch football this
I don't
week,
blame
I'll
you.
be honest.
I don't blame you.
We got a couple weeks left.
You did say to me, if Clemson was undefeated and Pitt, or if Clemson still only had one loss and Pitt was undefeated, you were going to be
That
there.
would be different. That would be very, very different.
Neither team did their job.
Neither team did their job, so it became a lot less exciting. So I didn't feel like going with that one. But this weekend, we're going to have plenty of college football. And you know what you should do this weekend? You should make some underdog picks.
Yes, you should.
You should make some underdog picks because underdog fantasy is one of the best ways to play along with college football. It's the easiest way to draft your perfect team, make pick-up entries. I had a rough week last week. I believe, did you go 1 for 2?
I went 1 for 2.
You went 1 for 2. But before you get there, you got to use promo code WALK-ON. You can get your free pick up to $1,000 in bonus cash. I mean, if you would have went against me, you would have went 2 for 2. And with all that bonus cash, you could have done something with it. But make sure you check out underdogfantasy.com. Promo code WALK-ON. You can find them in the App Store. Must be 18 or older. Play in terms will apply. But I love my picks for this week. Like, I'm sold on my picks this week, and I think everybody else should be on these picks this week.
Yeah,
I'm halfway
on your beat.
Carson Beck over or higher. My bad. Carson Beck higher than 0.5 interceptions. He has to throw 1 interception this weekend. This is free money. Like, this pick is actually free money. Put this with anything else. No matter if you pick other 2 picks, just pick this one as well. Carson Beck has 12 interceptions in his last 6 games. He's only had 1 game where he hasn't had an interception. And Tennessee's defense has 5 interceptions in the last 3 games alone. Carson Beck is the only way Carson Beck doesn't throw an interception this week is if he doesn't play. If they pull him for whatever reason because he fumbles, that's the only way he's not throwing an interception. He is throwing an interception if he plays the whole game this weekend. The other one I have is SMU quarterback Kevin Jennings going to higher than 223.5 passing yards. He has hit this in 5 straight games, and he is going he's going to do it again this weekend. He's absolutely going to do it again this weekend.
Jake, you should be very confident in that because I also picked Kevin Jennings to go higher than 223.5 passing yards. Like you said, 5 straight games with 250 yards passing, 250 or more yards passing. He's also going up against BC, who has the 101st rank, who's 101st in passing yards allowed. That's not good. Their best cornerback is also out for the year. That's not good. So I am 100%.
Boston College is going to play a new quarterback this week after Tommy Castellanos has decided he just isn't part of Boston College anymore.
Well, that was after he got benched. So he got benched, and then he decided to take leave.
Thom Brenneman just out here doing stuff.
Castellanos.
Castellanos, the first hit was Nick Castellanos, and he was a man of faith. And then Tommy Castellanos got benched and decided he was no longer part of Boston College.
Yeah, he may never put that headset back on again. My second pick is Jordan Raw Chicken Tyson. I watched him manhandle UCF last weekend, and I have him going for higher than 77.5 receiving yards. He's averaging 73 yards per game, and he's gone over that amount in the last 5 games. I think he's averaging about 80 to 90 yards in the last 5 games, maybe even more than that. So I'm very confident in my picks this week. If you want to make some good money, you should put all 3 of our picks in. We share one. So I think that would be a good bet.
I mean, the Carson Beck one is free money. Like, absolutely free, because provided that he plays the whole game, that's my whole caveat with this, is he's going to throw an interception. He's done it in 5 of his last 6 games. And the only one he didn't, I remember, I don't think he threw the ball as much. I think he was something like, I wasn't Kentucky.
It was against Auburn. It was against
Auburn.
Yeah.
Which Auburn doesn't count as a real team right now.
Yeah,
Auburn's terrible. All right, let's get into our Walk On Weekly 10 this week. I am falling significantly behind. I am 9 games behind right now after you going 8-2 last week. Strong week, or no, 7-3. My bad, 7-3. You went 7-3.
I think I went 5-5 last week.
I have you at 7 wins.
Well, we got to go over these now.
Well, I took Texas Tech, and you took Colorado.
I got that. This is spread, right? This is spread.
Yeah, I took Vandy to cover 3.5, and you took South Carolina.
I got that.
We both took LSU, and that's wrong.
Yep.
I took Georgia, and you took Ole Miss, and Ole Miss throttled them. As of this point, I have 0 wins, and you have 3.
Yeah.
We both took Indiana, who covered.
No, they didn't cover. They only won by 5, I thought.
Oh, you're right. We both took BYU, who covered.
No, they only won by 1.
Oh, never mind. I thought they backdoor covered it. Never mind. You are right. I don't know why I'm thinking about this. Never mind. Then I took Kansas. You took Iowa State. Kansas won. We both took Miami. Apparently, I just can't read scores. Never mind. I have 3 and you have 6 this week, because Clemson covered 6.5 against Virginia Tech.
Yep.
And Army covered 5.5. I have you at, no, you're right. 5-3. 5-3. Just kidding. I can't do math.
That's right. Hey, we're
not a math
podcast of integrity, but we are a podcast of integrity. We'll make sure we get it right.
We are not a math podcast. That's the main thing. I probably got to go back and double check this for this past week then. Nope, never mind. I did it right there. I just didn't do it right on ours. Anyways, let's get into our picks for this upcoming weekend, because we've got picks. We are going to start off with Utah and Colorado. Colorado is a 9.5-point favorite.
Can I say this? This might be one of the easiest weeks in picks, which means I'm probably going to go 0-10. I think Utah covers in this game. I'm taking Utah plus 9.5, and the biggest reason why is Utah's defense. Utah's is 18th in the country in passing yards allowed. We know that Colorado cannot run the football, even if there's a fire. So if Utah even has a pulse on offense, I think they can make this a game. I think Utah even has a good chance to win this weekend. But I'm taking Utah to cover.
I'm going to take Colorado. I think that Utah is going to be in a little bit of a hangover because they thought they should have beat BYU. They should have probably beat BYU. Also, super awesome that both teams were wearing home jerseys last week.
Yeah, I like that.
More rivalries need to do that. Like,
I agree.
I know USC and UCLA have done it, but like, come on, how cool would it be like Ohio State, Michigan? Like, you see both their home jerseys. Like, I think more key rivalries need to do that because it's awesome.
I agree.
Anyways, I'm going to take Colorado this weekend. I think Utah has a little bit of a letdown. I think Colorado is hitting their stride, and I think them knowing that Utah is still a strong team, this is a game where they need confidence. And if they can beat Utah, I think they'll have a little more confidence just because of Utah's defense.
Yep, absolutely.
Tulane is a 6.5-point favorite over Navy. Do you like the midshipmen or you like Green Wave this week?
I mean, shout out Jake Guillermo, offensive line coach for Navy. I can't pick against them ever. So you put Navy in the pick 'em, I got to take them. I'm taking Navy to cover. I'm a big plus sign guy this week, Jake. I'm taking Navy plus 6.5.
I'm going to take Tulane. Navy has not looked very good the last couple weeks. They beat South Florida, but the previous 2 weeks, losing to Rice, that was not a good game.
Yeah, don't lose
and
food.
They got trounced by Notre Dame. I'm going to take Tulane. Tulane has played pretty well. Their only 2 losses being to Oklahoma and Kansas State, and they were competitive in both of those. I think Tulane realizes that they have an outside shot at a playoff spot right now that they're ranked, and need to win out. So I will take Tulane to win this one. I'll take them to cover.
So far, we're different on both.
Texas against Arkansas. Texas is a 13.5-point favorite on the road against Arkansas.
Texas has looked bad the past few weeks, and I have not looked this up, so I want to get an update on this. Is Taylor Green playing against Texas? Yes, he is. He is set to return against Texas. Jake, I think I'm going to do it. Yep, I'm going with the plus sign again. I'm going Arkansas plus 13.5.
Yeah, I'm taking Arkansas here too. I'm probably same thing as you. Is I'm not sold on Texas right now.
I haven't been all year. I've been called a lot of names this year for 3 takes. I got called a name this weekend that I won't even share on this podcast, Jake. I'll tell you after this podcast is over. Let's just say it has something to do with
my. Were you called a Gamecock fan?
No, worse than that. Maybe not worse than that. I wouldn't share that either. But just say it had something to do with my last name. So that was for my Notre Dame take. My Texas defense being overrated and the team being overrated was a take I've been getting a lot of heat for. And then my Carson Beck take. And I feel pretty confident in all 3 of those things. Anyway, Arkansas plus 13.5. I think Taylor Green is the reason why.
Yeah, I'm going to take Arkansas as well. I'm just not sold on Texas. They haven't looked complete. I have a hard time thinking that they're going to be able to run over Arkansas. Arkansas has been pretty good overall, hit and miss. And this is an old school rivalry game. I think Sam Pittman gets them up and ready for this game. Tennessee is a 9.5-point dog to the Dogs, Georgia.
Yeah.
I know we talked about this already.
Yeah. I'm going Coonhounds over Bulldogs.
Yeah, I'm going to take Tennessee as well, especially if Nico is playing. I think Tennessee covers this. And like you said, it wouldn't shock me if Tennessee wins. I think they actually have a really good shot, especially if Carson Beck plays like he has been lately. Missouri is traveling to South Carolina and is somehow only a 12.5-point underdog.
Yeah,
I know which way you're going on this, but I know you're going to go in on this one.
Yeah, I would take this at 25 points, 24 points. You could double that. You could double that spread and I'd take it. I'm taking South Carolina minus 12.5. I'm finally going with the minus sign.
If Drew Pine is the starting quarterback, it's going to be a really long day. Dylan Stewart is going to live in the backfield. And I mean, we'll see what kind of celebrations Dylan Stewart does. Never know. Maybe ESPN uses demographic again. I'll take South Carolina to cover that 12.5. That feels pretty easy. Yeah. Oregon is a 14.5-point favorite on the road at Wisconsin this weekend.
I'm taking Oregon. I think that's a bloodbath.
I don't think it's going to be close either. This is the same Wisconsin team that lost by like 30 to Iowa 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
Why am I supposed to believe that suddenly Oregon is only going to win by 14? I think Oregon wins this by honestly, it wouldn't shock me if they win by 30 points. Oregon's arguably the most talented team in the country. They're number 1 for a reason. They're not losing to Wisconsin.
No.
Kansas, a 2.5-point underdog to BYU.
Man, Jake, I love our Jayhawks. Love Lance Leipold. They've looked good recently. They almost beat Kansas State. They beat Iowa State, which I was shocked.
I told you that one was going to happen.
You did. I was shocked. I thought Iowa State was going to get back on track. Man, I think if they're playing for a bowl game at this point. I got to take. Man, this is tough, Jake. This is tough. I really want to take Kansas so badly, but my brain's just like, don't be stupid. I'm not going to be stupid. I'm going BYU. I'm going BYU minus 2.5. But just know Kansas. If you can put an asterisk next to this one and say William really wanted to go with Kansas, you can put that on the graphic.
Well, I'm going to take Kansas because
good on you.
I think Kansas is going to do it again. Kansas is a way better team than their record shows. They are 3-6, but they are such a better team. They can run the ball. Devin Neal can do it. Jalen Daniels finally didn't look terrible turning the ball over. He only fumbled it once and didn't lose it. Through two touchdowns, only completed 12 passes, but for 295 yards. Just an absurd amount of yards. So I think Kansas is going to do it again. I think Kansas is rolling. The fact that this game is at BYU, it doesn't really change much for me. It's a after dark game again. I like the Jayhawks again.
Jake, I'm flipping to the Jayhawks, and let me tell you why.
I knew you would after I talked.
No, it's not after you talked. I wanted to look something up before I really committed to this, and the Kansas running game is what's convincing me. BYU is 68th in the country in rush defense, and I think that's going to put Kansas ahead. I'm just going to flip. I'm going to flip.
Our guy Lance Leipold, he's going to take care of it this week.
We have to. He's the walk-on coach.
He is the walk-on coach. Cincinnati is an 8.5-point underdog. This is how you know we're getting desperate. We have Cincinnati versus Iowa State here because that's like somehow in the top 10 best games of the weekend.
Yeah,
but Cincinnati is an 8.5-point underdog to Iowa State this weekend.
I think Iowa State gets right this weekend. I think they get right this weekend. I'm going to Iowa State. Jalen Noel had a great game, by the way, last week. I had him to go higher than 95 yards, 90 yards receiving, and he had 167. Cincinnati has been playing better all around, but I don't think it's going to be good enough to stop that offense. I think I'm really high on Iowa State right now, even though they've lost twice. This is why I'm higher on them.
Yeah, Cincinnati's lost 2 in a row, West Virginia and Colorado. I don't think it changes this week. Iowa State's at home. This game was in Cincinnati. Maybe I'd feel a little different, but being in Iowa State, being in Ames, I like the Cyclones here as well. Arizona State is an 8.5-point underdog to Kansas State this weekend.
Jake, give me Arizona State to win outright. I'm going Arizona State plus 8.5, and I really think they would win outright. I think Cam Scotabo is going to play this weekend.
He's listed as questionable.
He was trying to get into the game last week against UCF. I just love the way that Arizona State plays, and I think they're going to take Kansas State down.
My favorite part is that Arizona State, they're right in the thick of it, and Arizona State could be a playoff contender. Every week I'm doing Bubble Watch right now, and the Big 12 is hilarious because right now West Virginia is on Bubble Watch because they're 5-4 overall, but they're 4-2, and they own some tiebreakers right now if they were somehow to win out. So to me, a 9-4 West Virginia team making the playoff as the 12 seed is hilarious as just an option right now.
That's what makes this sport beautiful.
It somehow is absurd, but West Virginia plays Baylor this week and somehow could stay alive. I'm kind of hoping for it. But I'm taking Arizona State as well. I think Arizona State wins this game. I would love to see Scatabo play. I think Kenny Dillingham is one of the most underrated coaches in college football right now.
Yeah.
The guy is coaching an incredible team right now. He's coaching his ass off. The fact that their 2 losses are Texas Tech by 8 and Cincinnati by 10. They beat Utah earlier this year. They beat Kansas. Everybody thought they were going to lose to Texas State earlier this year because Texas State is pretty good. But Arizona State is coming down to the thick of their season where they've got Kansas State this week, BYU next, and then Arizona. They went out and they might be sitting in a playoff spot. They might be able to make the college football playoff in the Big 12 championship. We'll see. They need some help still. But yeah, give me the Sun Devils in this game. Last game here. Tell me why Clemson is going to cover 10.5 against Pitt.
I think this team has more dog in them than anybody wants to give them credit. And I just go back to the way Cade Klubnik looked in that second half last week. I think the offense is going to be able to come in, find that groove again. They're fighting, scratching, clawing to stay in that playoff race. And, when Dabo's up against the wall, that's when his teams play the best. And I'm biased. I know I'm biased. But even as a layman or as a person with no skin in the game, I think I would still take Clemson minus 10.5. Especially with Eli Holstein being out, I just think this Clemson team is going to be playing hot. Sammy Brown getting his first start last week only played 38 snaps and led the team in tackles. To put that in perspective, the two other starting linebackers, Barrett Carter and Wade Woodaz, played 63 snaps, and they both had 5 tackles apiece. So Sammy Brown is different. He is going to stay on that football field. Ashton Hampton had one of the best interceptions I've ever seen on the sideline against Rashad Felton. Clemson is better than people think. And, I think they're going to prove that against Pitt this weekend, Jake.
I think Clemson covers this, and I think it's going to be pretty easy. Pitt is on a downward spiral. They peaked against Syracuse, but when they played Syracuse, the offense didn't look great. Syracuse doesn't have a great defense. Clemson has a significantly better defense. Yeah. Pitt doesn't have much to play for anymore, other than the fact they're going to go to a bowl game. Clemson still has an outside shot at the College Football Playoff, and I think they know that, and they're going to use that as motivation. And I think Clemson wins this game by 20 points. I think it's 3 scores. I think this score is something along the lines of 38-17 when it's all said and done. I don't think it's going to be that close. I think there's some points at the end of the game.
I pray that you are correct.
Well, that does it for this week. You have an 8-game lead officially. You are 60, and I don't know what that number is. Let's see. You have 60 wins and 54 losses.
I'm making you money.
I have 52 wins and 62 losses. So I am not making you money. So if you're listening to me, you're not making money. So you should be listening to him. That does it for our episode this week. If you're not doing so already, make sure to go follow us on social media. We're on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, anywhere that you get college football content. We are likely there. Make sure to like and subscribe to the podcast. We're on Spotify, Apple, Google. I think we might even be on Amazon. Who knows? Maybe listen to us on iHeartRadio. Might even be there for all I know. Make sure to subscribe. Make sure to give us a rate. It helps us out a lot if you rate the podcast. Give us 5 stars. Give us 4 stars. Honestly, give us feedback. Doesn't always need to be positive. We'll take constructive criticism whenever it comes. Trust us, it doesn't hurt our feelings.
Yeah, we love it. Talk college football to me, baby.
Go follow William on Twitter at WalkOnMoose. He loves to give you all his Notre Dame takes. If you despise Notre Dame, that's the person to go follow.
Yeah.
But if you have anything else for us, make sure to drop us a like, drop us a follow. Let us know how we're doing. And with that being said, we'll see you guys again next week.